reason why I've never taken singing as something serious, because of the hoarseness. I've always had a problem with thyroid. It's been that issue.
Countess Vaughn did not just disappear after the Parker series. Her story kept going, just away from the spotlight. From child star to sitcom favorite, and then to her years of silence, she lived through fame, pressure, judgment, and loss. What really went on behind the wigs, the smiles, and the jokes? And how did the internet help rewrite her story years later? Join us as we walk through the truth, the reckoning, and the legacy of Countess Vaughn. The making of Countess Vaughn. This is where the story really begins, far away from Hollywood studios, in a quiet corner of southeastern Oklahoma. Idabel was not the kind of place people left to chase fame. It was the kind of place people raised families, went to church, and lived their whole lives without ever seeing a casting call. On August 8, 1978, Countess Danielle Vaughn was born into that world. There were no agents nearby, no talent scouts passing through town, no shortcuts to anything bigger. What Idabel did have was community, routine, and a church her family attended every Sunday. Before the Countess could properly read, before she understood what music meant beyond sound, people noticed something unusual. When she sang, adults stopped what they were doing. Heads turned. You know, the kind of attention that caught everyone off guard. But that was half the story, and what people notice next will change her entire life story forever. Stay tuned, because the real story just began. In church, while other children were struggling to join the choir, Countess stood out without trying to. Word spread fast in a town that small. Neighbors spoke about her. Church members talked, teachers talked. People agreed that the little girl could really sing. Her parents, Sandra and Leo Vaughn, saw it clearly. They were not wealthy people. They did not have connections. What they had was belief and a willingness to take a risk that scared most parents. They understood that talent alone does not open doors. Someone still has to knock. So in 1988, when Countess was 9 years old, they took her far from Oklahoma and placed her in front of something that changed everything. Star Search was not just another television show. It was the launchpad for serious careers. Beyoncé Knowles, Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, and Aaliyah would later rise to success through talent competitions. At that time, Star Search was one of the few places where raw ability could bypass gatekeepers. Countess stepped onto that stage as a child from Idabel, with no safety net behind her. You can still watch the performance footage today. A small girl under hot studio lights, standing still, delivering a song that sounded too big for her body. She did not perform like a child imitating adults. She sang like someone who already understood pain, longing, and control. When her name was announced as Junior Vocalist Champion and then as the overall junior winner, her reaction said everything. There was joy, but there was also disbelief. It looked like she had just realized her life might never be the same. And you know, moments like this mattered. Winning Star Search meant agents returned calls. It meant auditions were no longer a long shot. It meant Hollywood took her seriously. Within a year, Countess moved from singing competitions to scripted television. At 10 years old, she was cast as Alexandria Duval on NBC's 227, a show with an established audience and respected names like Jackie Harry and Marla Gibbs. This was not a guest appearance. This was steady work on a network sitcom. But that wasn't all yet. From the outside, it looked like a dream coming true. A child from a small town is now appearing weekly in living rooms across Black America. Regular paychecks, studio lots, makeup chairs, directors calling her name. But television never shows what happens between takes. On that set, Countess was the youngest person in the room, surrounded by adults who had already learned Hollywood's habits. Some of those habits were not kind. She later admitted during interviews that it felt almost overwhelming. Imagine being 10 years old, memorizing lines, standing on marks, trying to do everything right while overhearing grown-ups comment on your body as if it were a matter of public discussion. That kind of moment does not pass quickly. It stays. She did her job anyway. The cameras rolled. She smiled. She delivered lines. The audience laughed. Applause filled the room. But the applause didn't erase what happened off camera. It taught her something early and very clearly. Talent could open doors, but it would not protect her from the hazards of the job. Success did not buy safety. It only put more eyes on her. By the time she was barely old enough to understand what self-image even meant, Countess was already learning that her body came with commentary. She was praised for her voice, her timing, and her presence, and at the same time reminded that she did not fit an unspoken standard.
I'm going through that stage of being coarse all the time. It doesn't affect my singing. I can still do what I do.
Hollywood celebrated her gift while quietly teaching her that acceptance came with conditions. Still, she kept going. She had already crossed a line few ever reach. She was no longer just a talented kid. She was a working actress with national exposure. The industry had claimed her early, and with that claim came expectations, pressure, and lessons no child should have to absorb so young. Those early years built her confidence in her ability to perform under stress, but they also planted doubts that would surface again and again later in life. We'll get to that later. As she grew older, the work did not slow down. The attention did not fade. If anything, it only grew bigger. The girl from Idabel had proven she could sing, win, and perform on cue. Hollywood had taken note, and it was already preparing to place her into a box that would define the next chapter of her life. She was stepping into bigger rooms now, rooms where laughter came easily but understanding did not. The spotlight was getting brighter, and the cost of standing in it was only beginning to show. And what happened next in her career left the world completely speechless. Stay tuned. Countess Vaughn as Kim Parker. By the mid-1990s, Countess Vaughn was no longer the child people pointed at in surprise. She was a familiar face growing rapidly on black television. Week after week, she appeared in living rooms through guest roles, on shows that defined the era, hanging with Mr. Cooper, Thea, and Rock. And mind you, these were not just random appearances. They were proof that casting directors knew her name, trusted her timing, and understood that she could walk onto a set and deliver without drama. She was building an old-fashioned way, one episode at a time, learning how television really worked from the inside. Then Caminity 696. A new sitcom was forming around Brandy Norwood, already a major recording artist with albums selling in the millions. The show was called Moesha, and it was built to be a centerpiece for UPN, a young network investing heavily in black audiences. Countess was cast as Kimberly Ann Parker, the best friend. On paper, Kim existed to support the lead. She was loud, boy-crazy, and meant to punch up scenes before stepping aside. Pure comic relief. Nothing more. That plan lasted a while. But immediately, cameras started rolling. Something unexpected happened. The Countess did not just deliver jokes. She elevated moments. Her timing landed hard. Her expressions lingered in people's minds. Lines meant to pass quickly became catchphrases. Audience laughter came faster and louder whenever Kim entered a scene. By the end of the first season, viewers were repeating Kim Parker, moments at school, at work, at home. Fan mail followed. So did ratings attention. Kim Parker was not supposed to pull focus, but she did. And television always notices when energy shifts. Behind the scenes, the balance of power mattered. Brandy was the face of the show, the network priority, the singer with magazine covers and chart placements. Countess was the actress whose character kept stealing scenes. And in Hollywood, that kind of imbalance always created friction. Not public explosions, not headlines, but tension that people felt on set. Countess later revealed that the space felt like a competition. Recognition did not come evenly, and respect often followed status rather than performance. In 1998, that imbalance cracked in public view. Countess Vaughn walked onto the stage at the NAACP Image Awards and accepted the award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. The clip still circulates. Her name, her face, her work is acknowledged by the community watching most closely. That award mattered because it confirmed what audiences already knew. She was not background noise. She was a core reason people tuned in. But success on screen did not translate to kindness in the writing room. And what happened next will surprise you. As seasons progressed, the scripts narrowed Kim Parker's ideas: eating jokes, desperation for male attention, volume instead of depth. Each laugh landed, but the range shrank. Writers leaned harder into extremes because audiences responded. It worked for ratings, it worked for sound bites, but it never worked for the person carrying the character. Over time, the jokes stopped feeling fictional. When Kim was mocked for her body, viewers saw Countess. When Kim was rejected for being too much, that message did not stay contained within the story. Television blurs lines easily, especially when a character becomes iconic. The laughter didn't pause to separate the role from the person playing it. By 1999, UPN made a rare move. They gave Countess her own show. The Parkers was a spin-off that pulled Kim out of Moesha and placed her front and center. This was not a side project. It was a commitment. Kim Parker entered college. Her name appeared in the opening credits. She sang the theme song. Her face carried promotional posters across the network. Monique joined the cast as Nikki Parker, her on-screen mother, bringing stand-up comedy energy and star power of her own. For 5 seasons, the Parkers became a fixture. From 1999 to 2004, it ran more than 100 episodes. Families planned evenings around it. College dorms quoted it.
Come on, Adele. No contract, no deal. Then I can be buried next to my boo in Georgia, where I belong.
Kim Parker was no longer just popular. She was familiar in a way few television characters ever become. The show performed strongly in ratings and anchored UPN's lineup during a period when black sitcoms drove the network's identity. But inside the success, the formula remained narrow. Every week returned to the same notes: food jokes, loud reactions, public embarrassment played for laughs. The work paid the bills, but it also demanded endurance. Movie critics agree that the show did well financially. It generated syndication value, advertising revenue, and long-term streaming appeal years later. Yet leverage did not fall evenly across the cast. Monique entered negotiations with stand-up fame and industry bigwigs. Countess entered as someone who had grown up grateful to be still employed. Later, there were controversies over ownership stakes and royalties that did not meet expectations. The show earned, but the returns did not reflect how central Kim Parker was to its success. None of this was visible during the run. To viewers, it looked like a win story: lead role, steady work, cultural impact, but television rarely shows the emotional math behind the scenes. It does not show how repeated jokes settle into identity. It does not show how gratitude can keep someone quiet longer than they should be. It does not show how success can coexist with erosion. By the time The Parkers reached its final season in 2004, Countess Vaughn had achieved what many actors chase their entire lives: longevity, recognition, a character people would never forget. Yet something underneath had shifted. The laughter still came, the applause still rose, but the ground beneath that success no longer felt solid. As the cameras prepared to stop rolling, the industry around her was already changing. Networks were shifting priorities. Familiar spaces were going off TV. The role that made her a household name had also narrowed how others saw her. And once the final episode aired, the silence that followed shocked even her best fans. What happened to her next will leave you completely stunned. Stay with us as we reveal a little-known chapter: Countess Vaughn in the years after the Parkers. When the Parkers wrapped in 2004, the final night felt like a celebration, and an ending rolled into one. The studio audience stood, clapped, and cheered for a show that had lived with them for years. Countess Vaughn smiled, bowed her head, and thanked the room with her presence. But once the lights went down, something was missing. There was no following script waiting, no pilot quietly lined up, no phone call promising another lead. The applause ended, and the quiet after it felt heavier than she expected. Around the same time, the ground-holding black television cracked. UPN, the network that had built its identity on shows like Moesha.
Because I don't know how the audience is going to react to me playing Moesha.
The Parkers, Girlfriends, and One-on-One was disappearing. The merger that created the CW changed everything. The The new network chased younger and wider audiences, glossy dramas, and a different kind of image. Multi-camera black sitcoms were no longer a priority. They were not slowly phased out. They were dropped. An entire generation vanished almost overnight. For actors who had grown up inside that system, the loss was brutal. Casting offices stopped calling for the kinds of roles Countess had spent her life mastering. The comedy lanes vanished. The characters disappeared. The places where she fit best no longer existed. It was not that she forgot how to act. The industry simply stopped asking, and typecasting hardened fast. Casting directors still saw Kim Parker, loud, funny, plus size, comic relief. They did not imagine her as a lead in a drama, a romantic story, or something quiet and layered. Every audition echoed the same expectation: be big, be funny, be familiar. Growth was not part of the offer. Reinvention was not welcome. At the same time, her personal life was unraveling. Her marriage ended, leaving her to balance heartbreak with uncertainty about her future. Divorce carries its own weight, even without career instability attached. In her case, both arrived together. The sense of control she once had began to slip, not all at once, but steadily, like sand through open fingers. But that wasn't even the worst part. Physically, something else was happening, something she did not talk about at first. For years, wigs had been part of the job. Lace front styles glued down tightly to survive bright lights.
From my ears, from my forehead, the whole nape around my head, the pus.
Sweat and long shooting days. At first it seemed harmless, like a standard practice. But the glue did not care about routines or contracts. It burned slowly. It irritated the skin. It created infections that refused to heal. Her scalp reacted in ways she could not ignore, but she tried anyway. Hair began to thin around the edges. The skin darkened. Pain followed. Sometimes there was a smell she could not mask. The damage crept forward while she told herself it would pass. Speaking up felt embarrassing. Complaining about a wig in an industry that had already judged her body felt risky. So she stayed quiet and kept working with what she had. The silence came at a cost. Each time she removed the wig at night, the mirror showed something worse. Bald patches spread. The infections returned. Makeup could not cover what glue had destroyed beneath the surface. Still, she showed up. Still, she smiled. Still, she played the role of someone holding it together. In 2006, she appeared on Celebrity Fit Club. The show framed itself as a health journey, but it placed her body back under public examination. Cameras captured weigh-ins, emotional breakdowns, and conversations about food and self-control. Once again, her physical appearance became the center of the story. Millions watched. Commentary followed. The cycle repeated. The work that came after the Parkers arrived in small bursts. A role here, an episode there. Nothing steady, nothing anchored. A guest spot on Cuts, a part in an independent film, an appearance on Let's Stay Together years later. The work did not disappear completely, but it no longer felt connected to the culture that once knew her name instantly. In 2009, she became a mother again. This time, motherhood grounded her. It gave her something solid when the industry felt distant. When auditions dried up and recognition faded, her children remained present and real. They did not care about ratings or networks. They cared about her voice, her time, her attention. That mattered more than applause. As Hollywood moved on, Countess Vaughn stayed. She lived with the damage, physical and emotional, that years of pressure had left behind. She carried the memory of laughter that had once come easily, and the silence that replaced it. The industry did not announce her exit. It simply turned away. What made this period especially hard was how quietly it happened. There was no scandal, no headline declaring her career over, just fewer calls, fewer chances, fewer reasons to believe she would return to the center of things. For someone who had spent decades being visible, the fading felt personal. Still, she did not disappear. She adjusted. She survived. She learned how to exist outside constant applause, and without knowing it yet, she was moving toward a moment where silence would finally break, where truth would step forward, and where telling her own story would matter more than fitting into anyone else's version of success. The laughter had stopped, but the story was not finished. It was only changing form. Are you keen to know what Countess has been up to ever since? Well, stay glued as we provide the answer and more. Countess Vaughn after fame. By the time 2014 arrived, Countess Vaughn had lived several versions of the same life: the child star, the sitcom favorite, the quiet fade. What she had not done yet was tell the whole truth in her own way. That changed on a weekday morning when she sat under bright studio lights on a medical talk show called The Doctors. This time, she was not there to play a character or deliver a punchline. She was there to show what years of silence had done to her body. When the wig came off, the reaction was instant. Viewers saw the damage that had been hidden for years: burned skin, scarring along the hairline, bald patches where hair no longer grew. She explained that the glue used to keep lace-front wigs in place had eaten into her scalp over time.
I had to go through this in order to teach my little one that you gotta love yourself.
Infections had come and gone. Pain had become normal. This was not a bad reaction to one product. It was the result of long-term exposure and pressure to look a certain way on camera. That moment mattered because it changed her story. The damage was no longer framed as personal neglect. It was clearly tied to industry standards that rewarded silence and punished deviation. For many people watching, it was the first time they considered what television demanded from performers beyond what appeared on screen. The conversation moved away from gossip and toward accountability. Countess was no longer being judged for how she looked. She was explaining why she looked the way she did. That distinction gave her control she had not felt in years, but she wasn't done yet. Later that same year, she joined Hollywood Divas on TV1. The show brought together black actresses whose careers had stalled despite past success. Golden Brooks, Paula Jai Parker, Lisa Wu, and Elise Neal shared the screen with her. This was not scripted television. No writers were handing out jokes or protective edits. The cameras followed real conversations, real frustrations, and honest vulnerability. For Countess, it meant stepping fully into herself rather than hiding behind a role. Halfway through the season, she shared something she had carried privately since she was 16 years old. While still a working actress, she had an abortion because she believed pregnancy would end her career before it had a chance to begin fully. The decision did not come from a lack of love for motherhood. It came from fear. Fear of being replaced, fear of being judged, fear of losing everything she had worked for since childhood. Around 2015, Countess addressed the long-rumored tension with Brandy publicly. When Countess acknowledged the past and expressed goodwill, Brandy responded with warmth. The exchange spread fast online. Blogs covered it. Fans reacted with relief. It was not just about them. It was about ending a story that had followed two black women for decades. Closure arrived without spectacle. Then the internet did something unexpected. It remembered. Streaming platforms added Moesha and the Parkers to their catalogs. Viewers who had grown up with the shows returned. Younger audiences discovered them for the first time. Today, she stands as something more potent than a punchline or a comeback story. She is a survivor who outlasted a system that moved on too quickly. Thank you for staying with us. Are you a Countess Vaughn fan? Drop her a message in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen to enjoy it.